the growth is real, but it's not development. And I think which they brought with them across the Middle Passage, Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, of course, from the southern part of, and that everyone know that we're on country in the Caribbean. Appreciate you joining us from Thursday evening.
The fire burning red in a Joshua representing of a comes hard here. You know. Big up Kidaki, Buxton massive. Hey Babylon boy, you going like you know, like come son. Red.
Never joke, never joke, never joke. Oh, money never, money never, money never, money never, money never, money. I know what you conniving, money. Money never, money, money never, money, money. You can keep your conniving money when you've been up for a bum. You have been tell me money. Now because your money done, you come with conniving money. When you had your pocket full, you have been tell me money. Now because your money done, you hustle for tell me money. Yes, money never, money never, money, money never, money, money. Now know what you conniving money. Never, never joke, never joke, never joke. That's all the money that me walk. A 2 pound note and a kill that piece. A 2 pound note and a kill that piece. A 2 pound note and a kill that piece. This is all the money that me walk. I said money never, money never, money, money never, money, money. I know what you can have in money. Oh, Joseph.
Guyana and Guyanese, at home and abroad. Tune in to Guyanese Morning Time, hosted by Kadaki Amsterdam, where the sun always shines. Guyanese Morning Time, the people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people call it Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. We rise up early morning watching Comes TV, where wisdom and knowledge, yes, it is the key. Exposing corruption over land and sea, where the wicked politicians they try to trick me. Guyana is a land for everybody. With 6 races should live in harmony. Is one set of people getting oil money. Is one set of people doing the thievery. Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. This is a program that you all can see. Sharing your views and your integrity. Like it, comment and share it all around. Pass it to your neighbor, safe and sound. A sad situation going on in this town. The voice of the people is getting trampled down. Out of the mouths of babes and sucklings, which has ordained me to sing. I sing Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese Morning Time. Rhythm, Guyanese Morning Time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, fooling the people. You're promoting evil. Stop lying to the people. You are a part of the cycle. Stop fooling people. You're promoting evil. Stop lying to the people. You are a part of the cycle. I say, Guyanese Morning Time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again. They got Breakford, Bork and Mark Benchcop. David Hines and Kadaki Amsterdam. Sherrod Duncan, Nigel London. Normal Brown and Gavin Matthews. Big up Paslow Port People Governor. Simona Brooms, Robin Simpson. Hampton Green and Winston Jordan. And yes, we can go right on and on. Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again, Guyanese morning time. The people calling Guyanese morning time. Rhythm, Guyanese morning time. Intelligence and knowledge run the front line. We go again.
The relatives and friends of young Wyndham Bacchus, they deserve justice. The family, the relatives and friends of our in Boston, they deserve justice. The family, the relatives and friends of Peter Headley, they deserve justice.
And so when we say that Guyana is an apartheid state, we have the evidence to show.
All right, so today we are here at Club Twilight up in Buxton, and we are here to talk about all that's going on up here. Trust me, if you are on the East Coast, you're in Buxton, you're in Tongue, you're looking for a place to get away to, this is the place. The Cutters, mwah. Listen, I'll be having some just now again. We'll talk about that. And then, of course, the ambience is beautiful, fully air conditioned. The decor is on point. The music's on point. Everything's on point. It's just me. I need some work. But everything else that belongs to this club here is on point. So if you want to find a nice little place where you can just drive out of town and have some drinks, have some food, you can call, you can order your stuff and just take it. You don't have to stay. Or if you want to stay here, that's what's up. And of course, they have special events for Valentine's. You can rent a hall. You can rent a hall, honey. You can rent a hall for weddings, for birthday parties, to have a bash. I hope he edits that out. But you know, whatever it is, this is definitely the place to be. So it's on Sideline Nam. You definitely want to ensure that you check this place out. But it's on your to-do list. All right, on your to-do list. This is definitely the place to check out, you know, a really cool, chill spot here in Buxton. I like this. Buxton needed this. We needed this. I needed this. You definitely needed too. Thank you.
You can get meat anywhere, but for the best cuts of chicken, beef, pork, mutton, and lots more, check out T&W Harris Butcher Shop, located in the East Ramveld Market Meat Section. Call us on 609-7168, 641-4494. Ask for Rastaman. T&W Harris Butcher Shop for the best in fresh cut meats and lots more.
Comes out your son. You burn the swine when no want you shine. The tree of life, them no want you climb, cause them heart no kind. Comes, I say them heart no kind. Buxton Massive, Kidaki, Red Hat.
welcome to Politics 101 on a Thursday evening. Welcome to Politics 101, wherever you're joining us from, whether you're joining us from Guyana, inside of Guyana, or you're joining us from outside of the country in the Caribbean. Please share the link. Please share the live, and let everyone know that we're on Politics 101. Hello to all of you who are joining us from the southern part of the United States of America, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia. North Carolina, of course, taking a big hit, and we want to keep the people in those states in our prayers. Natural disasters are always difficult to deal with. And so to all our sisters and brothers in the southern part there, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, some in Tennessee and even Virginia. North Carolina taking the biggest hit. Good evening to all of you from that part of the world. And as I said, our prayers are with you. We have an affinity, with that part of the world, the Carolinas, South and North Carolina, West Indian heritage. They planted rice in the Carolinas, at the time during the period of enslavement, the United States was making big money from cotton, but they also realized that in the Carolinas they could plant rice, and they did have a lot of rice plantations there. And it was found that the enslaved people coming from Africa had skills in rice cultivation, which they brought with them across the Middle Passage. A lot of the West African civilizations, they were cultivating rice. So they came with that skill, and lots of them came to the Caribbean, went to the Caribbean, Barbados, Guyana, Trinidad, etc. And in fact, when they were starting rice cultivation in the United States, in the Carolinas, they imported enslaved people from Barbados. 133 people were force imported from Barbados to initiate rice cultivation in the Carolinas. And so if you from North Carolina, South Carolina, African Americans, a lot of you can trace your heritage back to the Caribbean, as those Barbadians were there and started the rice cultivation. In fact, those islands of the Carolinas where people speak like West Indians and people wonder, there was a lot of traffic between the Caribbean and the Carolinas, and they were involved in rice cultivation. They initiated rice cultivation there. A lot of enslaved people went from Africa straight onto those rice plantations, not just cotton, rice. In African American studies, we remember Priscilla, a 10-year-old girl who came to the Americas as a slave, and she was bought. I think the name of the plantation owners were the Balls, B-A-L-L-S, and Priscilla went to that plantation, and our forebears were able to trace, or great-great-great-great-grandchildren were able to trace their lineage back to that rice plantation, and then back to Sierra Leone in Africa. A tremendous story. Why did I get off on that? Yes, we were talking about the Carolinas, South Carolina, North Carolina. It's Caribbean place, in many regards. And, South Carolina, for example, is has the largest black population of any state in the United States of America. And that was so during the period of enslavement. There were a lot of slave rebellions there because of the large size of the black population. And back during slavery, the slave population outnumbered the white population in South Carolina. South Carolina is unique in that regard. Unique in that regard. And like I said, there is the Caribbean mix there in South Carolina. You're in our prayers, especially North Carolina, as we say. They took the biggest hit, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. I know lots of our people are in Georgia, the Atlanta area, and they were affected. So if you join us from there, our prayers and solidarity are with you. If you join us from Canada, good evening. If you join us from the West Coast, Midwest in the United States of America, good evening. The Caribbean, good evening. Good evening to all of you in Guyana. Of course, you cricket lovers were disappointed last night, I would imagine, as the game, the playoff game between the Guyana Warriors, Amazon Warriors, and the St. Lucia Kings was ended by rain, and the Duckworth-Lewis calculations kicked in, and Guyana found itself 16 runs behind. And so St. Kitts has gone into the final. Guyana has a second shot tomorrow night because they play Barbados. Because they were in the top two, and so they got a second shot. So they'll play Barbados, who won their playoff against Trinidad in questionable circumstances. You know, that blackout with the towers there meant that it was reduced to 5 overs, and Barbados was able to get the better of Trinidad. And so in 2 nights in succession, first night it was the blackout, and then rain last night. Well, no one has any control over the rain. But there we have it. Tomorrow night, Guyana gets another shot at it. You know, I don't want to blame the government for blackout, because governments don't cause blackouts. But the government has to take responsibility. The government takes responsibility for all the good things and all the positive things, and it must take responsibility when things go wrong. And we already have a problem with managing our energy and managing our electricity. That is a problem there from since I was a boy, and it's still there. We're not able to manage electricity. So when something like that happens, as Guyanese, it triggers in us a negative feeling. As I said, I am not blaming the government, and government caused the blackout. The government don't cause blackout. But the government must take responsibility because it has not been able to put in place a reliable system. Now I understand they call them what kind of lights I heard them calling them some kind of lights they call them, and they were making the point that artificial lights, I think is what they call them, but they were making the point that GPL was not directly responsible. Thanks, Yuri, yes, artificial lights. That GPL was not directly responsible. That the stadium controls its own system. It's at its own generators, etc., etc. But the GPL would have been there in the event there were problems. And perhaps GPL helped to restore the lights after 2 hours. But it was such a major embarrassment in 2024. You listen to the commentators, they're all talking about how well Guyana is doing. Stupidly, some of them. Well, let me take it back because it's perhaps too harsh to say stupidly. But naively talking about development in Guyana. I don't know what development they're talking about. But as they're talking about all this development in Guyana, badam, the light go out. Badam, as they're talking about development, the lights go out. What kind of development are you talking about? The lights didn't go out because there was a hurricane or heavy rains and so on. No. The lights went out in this developed Guyana that they were talking about naively. As I said, Trinidad is hard done. Trinidad is not my favorite team. I find those guys, tend to be super arrogant. The Pollards and so on, I'm not questioning their cricketing skills, but there's something about those Trinidadians, those Trinidad cricketers, that generation, the Pollards and Bravos and the Pelton bowler that I find they're paying too much of respect. Narayan, those chaps turned their backs on West Indies cricket at a critical juncture. And I am not so easily forgiving of them. So I say that to say the Puran and all of them, I say that to say that they're not my favorite team. Not for cricketing reasons, but for non-cricketing reasons, because we're not non-cricketing, but indirect cricketing reasons. They turned their backs. Those guys had skills that if they had given the Caribbean half of their time, we perhaps will not be as badly off as we are now. You look at Gorbaz playing in the CPL, and then his country is playing in a one-day series. He leaves the CPL, jumps on a plane, pays for his country. When he's finished, he flies back to the CPL. If Bravo and Pollard and Narayan and them had done that, split the time between making money and playing for the nation, we would have been what those chaps. Anyhow, this is not taken away from their skills as cricketers, right? And so I don't necessarily like them for, like I said, those reasons. But if I were Trinidad, I would appeal, because it was not their fault that the lights went out. But anyhow, that's that. But tomorrow Guyana gets another chance. We'll see. And I go there and I say naively, the commentators were talking about development in Guyana, and I'm saying naively because I find a lot of Guyanese do it too, and people, they mean well, but it's naivety. People confuse growth with development. People confuse, or they conflate growth and development. I remember as a boy listening to the radio, early 70s, I was a schoolboy. And I remember hearing a guy on the radio Wilfred David. He was then an advisor to the Burnham government. Wilfred is from Belgium. The Davis from Belgium, and he's in Washington, D.C. No, he's still alive. He was a professor at Howard University. He's retired now. But I remember hearing Dr. David on the radio talking about growth without development, that a country can have growth without development. I was in second or third form. And I remember hearing that. I didn't, of course, at that age, you don't know much about economics and economic theory and that. But that thing stuck with me. That thing stuck with me. That thing stuck with me. That there's a difference between growth and development. Later, I would learn that you can have growth without development. But in order to have development, you must have growth. I would learn that later, but it stuck with me. And so I'm saying, at that young age, one was able to at least have a sense of the difference between growth and development. And so I'm always amused when I hear people go to a place like Guyana and they see some roads and they see some buildings and they call it development. The government does it for obvious reasons. I think Jack Dio and them know better. They know that it's not development, but it's in their interest to say it's development. And people repeat it. I suppose their supporters repeat it for obvious reasons, but I think their supporters should know better, and I think they know better. What Guyana has is growth, enormous growth, compared to where we were. When you talk about GDP growth, the growth is real, but it's not development. And I think we get into a tangle because the opposition people don't want to acknowledge the growth. Because if they acknowledge the growth, then it will look as though they're acknowledging good work by the PPP. The PPP don't want to make a differentiation between growth and development. Because if they make a differentiation between growth and development, they can't take kudos. Because the growth is not because of anything the PPP has done. If the coalition government was in power, we would have had the same growth. Because the growth has come from the oil. The PPP didn't have to raise a finger. They didn't have to come up with any policy. The oil was there. And if it were Burnham government, Hoyt government, Granger government, Jagan government, we would have still had the same growth. So I want to intervene on this discussion because I want us here on this program to start getting it right. The growth that we are experiencing has absolutely nothing to do with the PPP. It has to do with the fact that we found oil. If you're selling you get a stall, you're selling drinks and beers and so on. And then somebody decide to come and build a stadium where you selling your drinks and your beer. Right? All of a sudden, traffic increases because a stadium opened there and you get football and cricket and all thing going in. And your stall is there, assuming they ain't knock down your stall and tell you can't move, that you got to move. But you're there. You don't have to do nothing. They built a stadium and you're now selling more than you were selling before the stadium been there without doing anything. So, sisters and brothers, the growth, do not be afraid to acknowledge that the GDP is growing. And that regardless of which government was there, we would have had the same growth. And that if and when the government changes next year, and the new government gets in there, and that new government hopefully will pay more attention to development. In order to develop, they will have to take advantage of the growth that we have. So do not poo-poo the growth, because it's the same growth we will have to use to change from growth to development. So that's the first thing I want us to get right. In acknowledging that the Guyana GDP is growing, the growth rate is not giving any credit to the PPP. They have nothing to do with the growth rate. Nothing to do with the growth rate. We found oil, and as a result of oil, our country's GDP is growing. You take away oil, and we would not see the same growth. So the growth is as a result of oil. And the rate of growth, the revenues that we are getting, has nothing to do with the PPP. It has to do with how much oil is selling on the world market. Whether it's $70 a barrel, $40 a barrel, $30 a barrel, the PPP has nothing to do with that. The price of oil on the world market has nothing to do with the PPP. The oil that is there has nothing to do with the PPP. Our growth rate has nothing to do with the PPP. Let us get that straight. The PPP has not been able to translate from first oil in 2019 to now. In the 5 years, we have not been able to translate that growth into development. And development is measured by the material circumstances of the people of the country. How much have we reduced poverty? Poverty rate in 2000 and before oil, it was 60 something percent, 60%. And over the period of oil, the poverty rate in Guyana has come down from 60% to 48 to 50%. So again, the poverty rate has come down since oil by 10%. Given the amount of money, given the growth, if the government was proactive in reducing poverty, the rate of poverty would have been lower. So that the rate of poverty has come down has nothing to do with the government. Guyanese, 80% of Guyanese still rely on remittances from outside. And when you talk about the reduction of poverty, you have to figure in the remittances. And so the coming down, the meager, slight lowering of the poverty rate has nothing to do with the PPP, because the PPP has not targeted poverty. It has to do with other factors. And so, poverty rate is high. Unemployment has not lowered significantly. I think we still, depending on which figures you look at, I think the IMF says our unemployment rate is about 12%. Others have put it close to 20%. But a lot of that unemployment, when you add underemployment, which is that people are employed but they are not getting a living wage. Then when you add the underemployment to it, or people are working part-time, then that rate goes up considerably. So we have not been able to reduce poverty. We have not been able to reduce unemployment significantly. We have not been able to reduce illiteracy significantly, 50% dropout rate. You all see the numbers for maths and English and so forth. All these human indices, these indicators of development, we are doing badly. Employment, literacy. All these things, these are the indicators of development, especially poverty. If the more you reduce poverty, the more you are on the path to development. If half of your population lives on $5.50 US or lower, that's what's happening in Guyana. Half of our working population are earning $1,100 per day or less. $1,100 per day or less. So the indicators of development, we are doing badly. The indicators of growth, we are doing well. The government stands in between growth and development, or growth and underdevelopment. And this government has been able to translate our growth into underdevelopment, not into development. Walter Rodney wrote the book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Somebody should write a book on the thesis, how the PPP in the era of oil has underdeveloped Guyana. I am not inventing this. I'm looking at the indicators of development. And I have to say that I'm not an economist. I'm, an observer, and I pay attention to these things. So I may be off with some of the technical things. But, as I said, don't be afraid to acknowledge the growth. The growth is not because of the PPP. And the PPP has not been able to translate the growth into development. In fact, it has translated the growth into underdevelopment. The value of your dollar before oil has not gone up, it has gone down. What your dollar could have bought in the market before oil, before the big growth rate, it is not able to buy today in the era of growth. The cost of living. Starbrick News is doing a wonderful job every week, and the government is poo-pooing it. But what it is showing is that the people are materially worse off today than when we didn't have oil. Which takes me to my next point. Having cleared that growth is real. Development in Guyana is not real because it's non-existent. The government has invested in infrastructure. And so it is seeing development through infrastructure, because that's where 58% of the budget is geared to. infrastructure. So the government is clear about its strategy. The path from growth to development is in development of the infrastructure. Well, you're developing infrastructure when poverty continues to rise, school dropout is high, illiteracy is high, migration has not stopped since we got oil. In fact, it has increased. More and more Guyanese are leaving Guyana. 80% and more of our people with tertiary degrees, bachelors and so on, live in Guyana, in an oil-rich Guyana. People don't leave development. People come to development. But our people are leaving. Our population is still below 1 million. More than 55% of Guyanese live outside of Guyana. People don't leave development. We know our people are leaving Guyana, the vast majority of them, to go to what they consider to be greener pastures. You get a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, they can't pay you in Guyana, so you're going where they're paying better. You're going to Grenada, if you're a teacher, or Antigua, or Bahamas. Not even America. You're going to countries whose GDP is 10% or of what Guyana GDP is. Yet our people are going to those places, which means that there's no development going on in Guyana. People are leaving. Migration is an indicator of whether you're developed. People don't leave America in droves to come to Barbados and Guyana. They come to vacation. But they don't leave development in America to come to Barbados. And Barbados is not doing badly. People don't leave development. Our people are leaving Guyana, which is an indication that Guyana is not developing. Somebody was giving me advice the other morning that, Doctor, if you want to be taken seriously, go get a job at UG and go home. The salaries that they pay at UG, I am so in solidarity with my fellow lecturers and so on at UG. But I tell you, I can't live. My expenses, UG can't pay my expenses. A lot of Guyanese would like to go home. To do what? To do what? A lot of Guyanese will go home after retirement. But as they get sick, they gotta fly back to America or England. Because we do not have the healthcare infrastructure to deal with certain kinds of illnesses. That's another sign, indicator of development. How long do people live? Are people dying of certain diseases that are curable? Do we have nursing homes equipped? Are people who retire and they go home back that they, if their family are not there, that they can go to nursing home and get the kind of care? All those things are signs of development, not there in Guyana. So when we are beating the PPP, do not afraid to say, God has made it possible for our growth rate, and you, the PPP, have not been able to translate the growth into development. You're translating it into underdevelopment. My attention this was drawn to a letter written by former Prime Minister Sam Hines in today's Kaitro News. And Sam Hines saying, the Stabrook News did an article early in the week saying that Guyana was supposed to receive a big set of money from Lisa 1 and Lisa 2 blocks, and they've only received 4.4 billion. I think Stabrook News, Kaitro News had said that they're supposed to get 20 billion or something. The Ministry of Energy responded to Kaitro News and said Kaitro News calculation was wrong, that we were supposed to receive 10 billion. And to date, we have only received 4.4 billion. So the government is saying, agreeing with Kaitro News, that we have only drawn down 4.4 billion from those two wells, those two blocks. Then we should have gotten 20 billion. And Kaitro News charges the government with mismanagement. So we only got 4.4 billion. And like I said, the government responded and said, no, Kaitro, is not, your calculations were wrong. It's 10 billion we were supposed to get. And to date, we've only collected 4.4 billion. And this was, the production sharing. Because apparently because there's no ring fencing, where, if there was ring fencing, the money will come to you up front. So if we had ring fencing, we would have gotten more money than the 4.4 billion. Because we don't have ring fencing, government is taking part of, not government, Exxon is taking part of the revenues from one block and they're putting it into other blocks. In the end, Guyana will get the money, but they will get it at the end. At the end. Ring fencing means that you cannot take money from one block and invest it in another block. Right? And if you weren't doing that, if you had ring fencing, more money would have come. So we would have gotten presumably more than the 4.4 billion if there was ring fencing. But because there's no ring fencing, Exxon takes the opportunity to take money from one block, invest it in another block. In the end, like I said, Guyana is going to get that money, but right now we would have gotten up front. Anyhow, so I think Kaitro News has accepted that they calculate wrong because it's about, how much per barrel you calculate. And I think Kaitro News has accepted we should have gotten 10 billion, but we got 4.4 billion. In comes Prime Minister Sam Hines. And Sam Hines said, well, look, we got 4.4 billion and we should feel good about it. We should feel good about it. Because according to my friend Sam, according to Sam, if we have trouble absorbing 4.4 billion, we would get more trouble if we had 10 billion. Jesus Christ. Sam. Oh boy. Excuse me for laugh, if you can't laugh sometimes, if you can't cry, you gotta laugh sometimes. Sam is telling us, look, we should feel good we get $4.4 billion. Because if we have trouble absorbing 4.4 billion, if we had 10 billion, we would get more trouble. What Sam really should say is We get 4.4 billion and it's not trickling down. Maybe that's what you want to say. And it's not trickling down to the people. It's not helping to reduce poverty. It's not helping to reduce illiteracy. It is not helping to improve the cost of living. It is not helping to put more wages in the pocket of workers. If we can't do that with 4.4 billion, if we had 10 billion, it'll be worse. Sam, if we get in 4.4 billion and we thief in it, or we putting it into infrastructure so it can go into the pockets of a few comrades. If we get $10 billion, Sam, you're right. Is more money going to be stolen? More money will be funneled to the comrades. That is what Sam, I think, intended to say. That's not what he said. He used the word absorb. Sam has a way in using words that sometimes you don't know what he means. But he said, if we have problem absorbing 4.4 billion, what if we had 10 billion? Sam, if we cannot distribute 4.4 billion equitably, when we get 10 billion, we are not going to be able to distribute it equitably, Sam. That's what you ought to be saying. And somewhere deep in your inner mind, I think that's what you want to say, but you can't say it because you're a PPP. So here is Sam saying we must feel good because of 4.4 billion. Kaitor News, in his news story, as a headline, Guyana should rejoice over paltry proceeds from oil, former PM Sam Hines says. No, here is where Kaitor News gets, it is as guilty as Sam. Guyana should rejoice over paltry proceeds. Again, Kaitor News, I love you all. But 4.4 billion out of 10 billion is not paltry for Guyana. 4.4 billion is not paltry for Guyana. 4.4 billion is almost half of 10 billion. Sam is wrong to say we should rejoice. Kaitor News is wrong to say it's paltry. And here is where I come down, in between them. Both of them are misleading the nation. Sam is saying we should rejoice with half of what we get when we should have gotten 2 times that. No, Sam, we can't rejoice because your government policy has not allowed us to draw down as much as we should draw down. But Kaitor News, you are also misleading Guyanese because 4.4 billion US dollars for Guyana is not paltry compared with what we used to get before. It's not enough, but it's not paltry. So Sam should not be rejoicing over 4.4 billion. And Kaitor News should not poo-poo 4.4 billion. Because that 4.4 billion, 90% of it has gone into the hands of the friends, family, and favorites, to use a PNC term. Both sides are misleading. 4.4 billion is half of what we should get. We should want to get our 10 billion. We should want to get our 10 billion. but we get half of it. It's not paltry. It's paltry compared with what Exxon is getting and taking, but it's not paltry compared with what we were getting before oil. And when you say it's paltry, Kaichor News, and some of you on here probably agree with Kaichor News, then you say the government thieving paltry. No, the government not thieving paltry. The government teaching plenty money. That paltry that you were talking about, Kaichor News, go look at the PPP operatives and the properties that they own. Go look at the businesses that they get. Go look at their bank account and tell me if it's paltry. Tell me if it's paltry. Go look at them big contractors and how they're living and tell me if they live in paltry. Look, we got to get this right. The Working People's Alliance, the WPA, our party, my party, we are saying this is not knee-jerk. The contract bad. Full stop. The contract bad. But what we are getting from that bad contract is not paltry compared to what we were getting before. And what we are getting is enough to move Guyana along a path of development. It's not, what we're getting is not going to get us developed overnight, but we can begin to reduce poverty. We can begin to reduce school dropout. We can begin to reduce the cost of living with what we are getting. It's not paltry, comrades. It is not. So look, we have to be able to make arguments that make sense. This is not one or the other. Look, I have no place for the PPP, no time for the PPP. But the PPP has signed with 6 new companies based on the auction recently. They have signed a new PSA. A new PSA with these new companies that are coming in. They're signing the new PSA. How does the PSA, the new PSA, differ from the old PSA that was signed back then under the coalition? Under the new PSA, the royalty rate will go up to 10%. So we had a 2% royalty rate. With the new blocks that are coming in, we are now going to go up from a 2% royalty. We're going to get 10% royalty. The cost recovery ceiling will go down to 65%. Right? Under the old PSA that some are arguing should be renegotiated, the old PSA, the cost recovery was 75%. It has now come down to 65%. So the companies will get back 65% for their cost recovery. And the profit sharing will remain 50-50. So the difference between this new PSA model and the old PSA model is that you have higher royalty from 2% to 10%. And the cost recovery has been lowered by 10%. That is the difference. We have to acknowledge that there is a new PSA that is an advance on the old PSA. I'm saying that if and when a new government gets into power, it's not just about reviewing the PSA that was signed with Exxon back in 2016 and reviewing this new PSA that is signed by the PPP. Like I said, this new PSA lowers from 75 to 65 for cost recovery. And royalty goes up from 2% to 10%. So Guyana will be getting some more money up front from the new, under the new PSA. And I'm saying any government coming into power should be able to review both PSAs. And I'm arguing that if a new government goes into power and there are new blocks that are discovered, and we have new auctions and people bid and get to the block, we should be looking to reduce cost recovery from 65% to lower, probably down to 50%. We should be looking to say in the new contract, the new PSA, probably we should go to a 45-45% sharing, production sharing. 55% for the government. What I'm saying is that it's not just about renewing, renegotiating all the contracts. It's about new contracts coming on stream and to correct mistakes that were made in the older contracts. The PPP, like I said, they have signed a new PSA. It's a little improvement. Royalty go up from 2% to 10%. Cost recovery drop from 75 to 65. It's a little improvement. WPI is arguing that going forward, we should be in a stronger position that when we are negotiating new contracts, we are able to improve on what we have before. We now have two PSAs, one with 2% royalty, 75% cost recovery, 50-50 profit sharing. The PPP, the one that they recently signed, 10% royalty, 65% cost recovery. The economists will tell us what that amount to. I don't know. But economists will tell us how much is the government pulling in, how much more they're going to pull in with this new PSA, how much more they're going to pull in between that and the old PSA. They're going to get some upfront money because the signing bonus is an upfront thing. So they will get some upfront money from the signing bonus, more upfront money. As I said, the economists will tell us how much more we're going to get from the second PSA. But for us in the WPA, it's not just about renegotiating the old PSAs. Those old PSAs have to be reviewed. If we are part of any government, we will argue to review them, because you first have to review before you're able to say whether you will negotiate or not. And you have to decide what is it you are going to renegotiate. Are you going to renegotiate a lowering of the cost recovery? Are you going to renegotiate a better royalty? Are you going to renegotiate the cost recovery from 50-50 to 55 for us and 45 for Exxon? What are you going to renegotiate? You first of all have to review to determine what you're going to renegotiate. And so I am arguing here that we in the WP are in favor of review. And on this, we are at one with the PNC. And we are saying that when you review, the review will tell you what you can renegotiate. You may renegotiate a bigger royalty. Will that bring more to us? or you can leave the royalty at 2% and renegotiate a higher production sharing? Or should you leave production sharing at 50-50 and reduce a law, renegotiate a law cost recovery? A review will tell us that. So let us not be knee-jerk on these things. Let us not be knee-jerk. Our strength is going forward. As new blocks are found, because we are estimating there are over 30 billion barrels of oil that we have. The government and some of the companies are, Exxon, they're telling us it's 11 billion. We are saying there are about 30 billion barrels in reserve. So going forward, we have a chance to have new contracts. And we are saying that we have to pay attention to better contracts going forward, even as we are reviewing old contracts. This thing, you know, where Kaitron News is saying the contract is good for nothing. If you don't renegotiate the contract, nothing else matters. And then the government is telling us, oh, well, look, we should rejoice with what we get in. WPA said neither of the two. We are saying neither of the two is satisfactory. We should try to get more. But what we are getting is not paltry compared with what we were getting before oil. And so we must concentrate on distributing in a just and democratic way what we are getting. There are two contracts. There is a contract between Guyana and Exxon and the other oil companies, and there's a contract between Guyana government and its people. The Guyana government has to meet both contracts. The business contract with the companies that are pumping our oil, and the social contract with the Guyanese people. Again, this is not black and white, one or the other, both. The government has to satisfy its contract with the people of Guyana. Better wages, better education infrastructure, targeting of poverty. That's your contract with the people of Guyana, whether you're getting 4.4 billion or you're getting 1 billion or 10 billion. This argument of one or the other. So WPA would review the two PSAs because there are now two. The first one signed by the coalition, the second one by the PPP. And with new contracts, we are going to argue that they must be improved. There must be improvement on the old PSAs. That is how you manage. You have to have imagination. You have to look at your strength. You have to be nimble. Suppose now Exxon come and say, well, let's renegotiate. What are you going to renegotiate? Are you negotiating royalty, signing bonus? Are you renegotiating profit sharing? Are you renegotiating cost recovery? What are you renegotiating? This is where the PNC makes sense in their 10-point plan. Because they're saying you must force review. WPS supports that. You must force review. And you must look at your choices. We just thought we will intervene in the discussion in this way. First of all, the growth, do not be afraid of growth. the growth is not because of the PPP, it's in spite of the PPP. Second, the PPP has failed the test in translating growth to even a minimum development. In fact, they've turned the growth into underdevelopment. The Guyanese worker is earning less today in real terms than he or she earned before oil. Illiteracy, school dropout are still as high as when we didn't have oil. Poverty still stares half of our population in their faces. So they failed the test of translation from growth to development. But the growth is real. Because if there is a new government, when there is a new government, it is that same growth the new government will have to use to facilitate development. So don't throw the baby out to the bathwater. It has nothing to do with PPP. You know, they're not, IMF and the World Bank and so on, they're not lying when they say we have a high growth rate. And high growth rate, you're right, it's numbers. It's a numerical measurement. If you take away what we're getting from oil, that growth rate will go from 48%. It's projected this year to go by 30-something, go up to be 30-something% growth rate. They're saying 48.7 in the first half. And by the end of the year, they're predicting it should be somewhere in the 30. Don't poo-poo it. It's real. The rate is real. What is not real is the development. There's no development. There's underdevelopment. And so we got to get our arguments right if you're going to trap the PPP. They like when we say there's no growth. They like that. But we are saying to you there is growth in spite of you, not because of you. And you have not turned that growth into development. Get the hell out of here and allow people who have the vision to translate growth into development. And that is the platform on which the WPA is campaigning. The government has signed a new PSA. Slight improvement on the old PSA. But we have to be frightened because they're getting more money now upfront from the signing bonus, the royalty that gone up from 2% to 10%. I don't have the numbers in front of me, how much they're going to get from the 6 blocks that they've awarded contracts to. But where is that increase going? Where is that increase in money they're getting from the PSA? It's going to their friends, their family, and their favorites. It's not going to teachers. It's not going to public servants. It's not going into education infrastructure. It is not going into developing the University of Guyana into a research one university. It is going into infrastructure, which is the cash cow for corruption. So the PPP is turning our growth not into development, but our growth into corruption. That's a new economic model now. Translation of growth into corruption, when it should be growth into development. Translation of growth into underdevelopment, when it should be growth into development. So I want us to get it right. The PPP can be more bright than we. We are as bright as they are. And we are not going to be knee-jerk and just say, the growth is, no, the growth don't mean nothing. Kaitro News is into that, and, God bless them. They're making a contribution in highlighting the sins of the old contract. But beyond that, they're not helping us because they're not saying what we are getting, though compared with what the companies are getting, what we are getting is small. But compared with what we were getting before, compared to the size of our population, 700 and something thousand people, what we are earning on oil, each Guyanese should be worth $20-something million. We are not getting that, and Kaitro News is not paying attention to that. And then our brother Sam, on behalf of the government, poor Sam may be helping our case. Because Sam is saying, if we can absorb 4.4 billion, how can we be able to absorb 10 billion? And I'm interpreting for Sam, because he's speaking another language. Sam is really saying, if he thief in 4.4 billion, if you get 10 billion, you don't expect thieving to increase? That is what Sam should have said. I'm interpreting for him. So Sam is wrong to say we must feel good. And Kaitro News is wrong to say we mustn't feel nothing. We are changing this conversation. And that is what campaigning is about. This is a WPA campaign. This is a WPA campaign. Yes, we may not be able to show, 50,000 votes that we get in the past, but we are saying we are connecting with our voters. And the way we choose to connect with our voters is to, first of all, tell the truth. And second of all, in the process of telling the truth, to indict the PPP. You can't indict them with lies because they are liars. You indict them with the truth. The minute you say that what we get in is paltry, Jack, you don't have to fight nothing because, it is not true that what we are getting is paltry compared with what we used to get. We are getting a lot compared with what we used to get. Compared to the size of our population, each citizen is worth, theoretically, a lot more than we were worth before. And there is no development. How do I know that? How does the WPA know that? People don't run away from development or migration rate, including migration by PPP supporters, increases by the day. People don't run away from development. If you're developed, half of your children don't drop out of school. If you're developed, your literacy rate goes down astronomically. That is part of development. Your university must be a research one university, so that when your people get sick, they don't have to fly to Trinidad or Barbados to do, I don't want to say simple medical procedure, because no medical procedure is simple, but to do certain routine medical procedures, which we have to go outside to do. Those are marks of development. And the WPA is serious about development. Development is reflected by the skill set of your workers. You have to constantly invest in developing the skill set of your workers. All them roads that you build in, half of the Guyanese population will never walk on them roads. Lady in Buxton tell me, me not drive car, Them road are for people who drive car. My feet is my only courage. That's what Brother Bob says. My feet is my only courage. You got to develop the feet so that they go from being a courage to something better. You want your teachers to be presentable. You want your teachers to be able to reproduce themselves materially, look good, smell good, talk good, walk good, to be informed. And that's what you must invest in. Yes, we need better roads. Yes, we need better bridges. There's no doubt about that. But man shall not live by bread alone. Shall not live by bread alone. The PPP wants us to live by infrastructure alone. That for them equals development. Oh no, it does not. The more roads we build, the more accidents on the road. It is not the roads that are causing the accident. It's that now you're building bigger road, wider road. You have unruly drivers. They're going to drive fast naturally, but you're not investing money in safety of people. So as you build bigger roads, what about the safety of the people? As a rule, when I'm driving in Guyana, I meet Plaisance, I know Plaisance lined up is always full of people. I slow down, they just blow me, cuss me. But I am not going to speed through a village. I'm from a village. I do not speed through villages. Even if the speed rate is kilometers, 80 kilometers. I go into a village, I go in half that. So you have to invest in safety. Roads by themselves could be dangerous. The wider the road, the bigger the road, the more them buy and girl drive and put cock up their motorbike in the air. And what are you doing about safety? What are you doing? The police force is, in its present state, can't do nothing about safety on the road. They're too corrupt. In fact, there's a cash cow. They stop you. Give me a thing. You have to invest in better quality in the police force. How do you reduce corruption in the police force? You first of all got to pay police better. And the more you reduce corruption in the police force, the more likely they are to help to bring about order on these roads you're building. These roads you're building. The PPP has no plan but to transfer money, our money, to transfer it to their friends and favorite. As I said, I ain't getting into the economic stuff. I'm not an economist. I know there's get plenty economists money, and the economists will work out the numbers and so on. I'm speaking here as a political economist. A linking of the economy with the politics and the social situation. And in many cases, I'm being general. As I said, the economies, if you're renegotiating a contract, you want your economists to tell you what you should renegotiate in the contract. So I am not taking over the work of the economists. We have economists in our party. Dr. Clive Thomas, Professor Clive Thomas, is one of the top developmental economists. That's why he's called a developmental economist in the Caribbean, the third world, and the world. And, you know, he's helping us tremendously in coming up with an economic plan. We recognize, for example, and I'm going to speak on this on another program, we recognize that you have to have a plan for oil and gas. But our method is not to start with a plan for oil and gas. Our method is to start with a large economic plan for the country, of which oil and gas is going to be an important part of it. That is our methodology. You know, some of the other parties are starting with a plan for oil and gas and then move outwards to the large economy. And we are saying we are starting with the large economy and then move outwards, move inwards, sorry, to oil and gas. For us, oil and gas is important. Agriculture is equally important. Education is equally important. Healthcare is equally important. Our tourism sector is equally important. In fact, in this era of oil and gas, our tourism sector could become a big, big boom. Ecotourism. We are unique in the Caribbean where that is concerned. The WPA plans to make our tourism sector a pivotal aspect of our economic plan. You see, if you start with oil and gas, you could get trapped there. If you start with a larger economic vision, oil and gas is important in terms of the flow of revenues. But that flow of the revenues would be turned into policy within the context of your large economic plan. Reduction of poverty. Reduction of the cost of living. Investment in wages and salaries. All those things are part of the larger economic plan that we will speak on as we go forward. But I just wanted to lay down the marker tonight on this question of growth and development. Do not poo-poo the growth, but do not conflate growth with development. Poo-poo the development, because the development is not development, it's underdevelopment. Put this growth in the hands of a government that includes the WPA, and you will see development. That is the message. I am not sitting here and telling you all that the WPA can win an election. That would be the miracle of our times. You know, we are a relatively small party, so we don't have a track record in things. But you know, I think if we had a system where each party runs on its own, and then at the end of the election, you collate with who you want to collate with. We would collate with parties that we think can put Guyana on the right footing, not the PPP. We don't feel the PPP is putting Guyana on the right footing. So as a short term, we're not going in the end, we believe in shared governance. So we will have to deal with the PPP in the end. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you we can win an election. I'm not saying that to say the PNC is wrong, because the PNC could win an election on its own. They're a big party. And the possibility of them winning an election on their own is 10 times higher than the WPA. So we can't speak like them, right? Right? But we feel that we are speaking for a segment of our population, bigger than people will give us credit for. We feel that in an election, all things being fair, we can win seats. Somebody was telling me about an unofficial poll or an official poll, I don't know what it is, that shows the WPA winning 3 to 4 seats. And that was the first time that group is polling us. The first time they polled us, it shows us winning about 3 to 4 seats. So they say, I don't know. I haven't seen the methodology. I haven't seen that. But we feel that, you know, they are you know, I am convinced that a lot of people, certainly on the opposition side, even if the WPA is not your first choice, the WPA is your second choice. And you know, the late Lanny Grenier had come up with that thing where a person, multiple voting, and she said, you know, give citizens 2 votes. They cast the first vote for the party of the first choice, and then a party of the second choice, they cast second vote. I'm trying to remember which country used that system, but Lanny Grenier had come up and she was suggesting that for America. Suffice to say, what I'm saying is that contrary to those who are Obia men and women who are saying WPA can't win a seat or they bring nothing to the table and so on, you know, that is for them. You know, we are doing our work and we are saying that we have a vision of where we want to take Guyana and how we're going to use the oil resources. And so this is a beginning salvo. We are not naysayers who are saying the growth don't mean nothing. Nor are we saying that the growth is development. Both of them are wrong. Growth is not development, but growth is necessary for development. And if the growth rate continues, when the now opposition wins power, our challenge to you, challenge to ourselves, is to turn that growth into development. And that's the one important plank of the WPA going forward, turning our growth into development. Clearly, it's not something that the present government is literate about, because they're turning our growth into underdevelopment. I love you all. Thanks for staying the distance with me in this important aspect of our conversation. I'll see you all tomorrow.
Morning, neighbor, morning. Are you morning? Welcome to another program of Guyanese Morning Time. I am your host, Kidaki Amsterdam. It is 7:45 and it's Friday. It's Free Talk Friday. It's the 4th of October in the year 2024. How you been? How you do? How was it yesterday? How was it last night? What going on with you this morning? What going on for you today? What do you have planned for today? What are your SMART goals set for today? How do you plan achieving them? Talk to me. How do you plan achieving them? I know at the end of the day you would need some relaxation, so you can come down to Club Twilight and get some relaxation. Last night karaoke was grand. We thoroughly had a good time. I wish you would join us sometime in the future. Next week, perhaps, next Thursday, karaoke is on. This Saturday, we're doing some oldies. So you can come down to Club Twilight for Saturday night oldies. Good? Yes, come and have a good time, man. We need some relaxation. Stress kills. And this country is full of stress. A whole lot of stress. And it's not only the small man stressing, but the big man stressing too. Everybody's stressing. Right? You've heard Dr. Hines. I don't intend to do a lot of talking this morning, not because I don't have anything to say, but I'm trying to conserve my energy. I'm not feeling 100. Everybody, we all have our down days. And so I've been going through some down days this week. I'm trying. But I have undertaken a task which I will always give up my best to have completed. It's the kind of person I am. I'm dedicated to what I do. So if I decided I'm going to make your life a living hell, trust me, you're going to be made a living hell. Right? If I decide that I want to make you uncomfortable, trust me, you're going to be made uncomfortable. Because whatever I choose to do, I dedicate my energies to. Right? You heard Winston Jordan yesterday, and you heard Dr. Hines. I know some of you are on his platform, so you would have heard him last night, and then you had the opportunity to hear him this morning. Let's talk about some of the things which were discussed on those two programs. I think maybe tomorrow, maybe Sunday, I'm going to do a special program with broadcasting the two together, which means we're talking about maybe another 3-hour program. Because there's so many nuggets there. If you really want to understand what's happening with the Ghanaian economy and what's happening with the oil wells, and so on, I think those two programs you can listen to back to back. Right? Listen to them back to back. Yesterday we spoke here about the Chinese. We spoke about the protest in Agricola, and we spoke overall about the Chinese domination of the local scenery in terms of businesses in the communities and so on. And true to form, the defenders of the Chinese came out to say that they can't do nothing, right? They can't do nothing to restrict the Chinese from doing business because it will go against international norms, etc., etc. You know, when I hear those utterances, I ask myself ever so often, if the leaders of the PPP believe that every Guyanese is a PPP and every Guyanese is intellectually lazy and every Guyanese will just sit and accept this trash being told to them, or all the foolishness that they keep telling Guyanese, right? Because I know for a fact, internationally, protectionism is, and that's what governments call it, that is what it's called, protectionism, is frowned upon internationally. And that is protectionism in the sense of government putting into place policies that will keep foreigners out of the markets and so on and so forth. But every society is entitled to and has laws which protect the indigenous enterprises. For example, I was told long before Mr. Jordan mentioned it yesterday, you can't find a Walmart or Macy's in certain sections, certain communities of the US, certain states of the US even. Right? Understand that. Why? Because they have in those communities what they refer to as mom and pops stores. We call them neighborhood stores, we call them village shops. And they recognize that should those large corporate entities pretending to be mom and pop stores coming to your area, they are going to destroy the village economy. They're going to destroy the livelihood of the people who operate these businesses in the communities. And by doing that, they're going to create more problems for governments. Because imagine a single mother, let's say, operating a village shop and is able to provide for herself and her children, however many they are. And then boops comes the Chinese. And because the Chinese have an advantage of scale, I hope you all understand what is advantage of scale, and I know you all understand what is advantage of scale because we're talking to the intellectually lazy here. Because the Chinese have an advantage of scale, the pricing, whether predatory or otherwise, would be better or more attractive, let me say, not necessarily better, more attractive than that corner shop operated by the Singapore model. And while we argue that people have to be more cooperative, people have to recognize that charity begins at home and support that shop, and so on and so forth. Human nature is of such that people are going to look to see where they can stretch their dollar, especially in an economy as difficult as this one. And so over time, the Chinese are likely to erode the business support of the corner shop. And that corner shop is likely to close its doors. When the corner shop closes its doors, what happens? The single mother is out of a job. The people she supports from her income from the shop are now not getting that support. The single mother, and let me look at it from this point of view in particular, the single mother who could have stayed home or in her immediate home environment and earn a living and take care of her children at the same time, see them go and see them come, and be there to tutor them and mentor them and so on, might now be forced to go out there seeking employment, most likely for meager income, which can't really provide for them. And while she's out there earning that meager income, her children are left unattended, unsupervised. And you know what the rest is. All kinds of things can happen to them, and all kinds of things can happen by them. And so there is reason. The case has already been made why we need to protect our quote-unquote mom and pop stores, our community businesses, our indigenous businesses. Now, no one is arguing against, let's say, a Chinese supermarket every 10, every 12 miles in a particular stretch, or even 15, 20 miles in a particular stretch. People are concerned that in less than 3 miles, like I checked yesterday and I said to you, in less than 3 miles, you got about 6 Chinese supermarkets. So a little village, a little community, one can say is sandwiched by Chinese supermarkets. That is the problem. And if you go to any other country, I think, quite frankly, you will find that local government and national government have in place policies to protect those indigenous businesses because they recognize the importance of those indigenous businesses. Bonham used to say, the small man is the real man. The small man is the real man. We need to enact policies that will ensure that our small men become and remain real men. Big businesses have their roles. Definitely they have their roles. And the role is not to crush. The role is not to crush small businesses. There must be some, what is it, the word symbiotic relationship. You eat, I eat. You eat, I eat. I'm saying again, it is good to tell our people about nationalism. It is good to tell our people about patriotism. It is good to tell our people about supporting their own. But when your government policies do not support people supporting their own, you have to talk about that. You have to talk about that. I want to tell you something. I said it before and I'm going to say it again. I believe the PPP and their friends are investors in a lot of these Chinese businesses. Hence, they will not take the kind of actions to protect the indigenous businesses. Because in short, if they take those actions, they're taking those actions against themselves. How many reasons for y'all? Buxton, for example. Do you believe it's likely that any right-thinking Buxtonian would have allowed an Indo-Guyanese to come and set up a big supermarket as the Chinese supermarket on the Buxton Public Road? Do you believe that African Guyanese family, that Buxtonian African Guyanese family would have agreed to lease their lands to Indo-Guyanese to establish a big supermarket there? I put my head on a block. No. I'm willing to argue, no. Even if they were offering the same kinds of money that the Chinese are offering, the answer was most likely going to be no. And it doesn't have anything to do with racism, but it has to do with history. Historically, in this Guyanese society, there is distrust among African Guyanese and Indo-Guyanese, especially when it comes to business, especially when it comes to land. And so it's highly unlikely they would have agreed to lease that land or sell that land even to Indo-Guyanese to set up a supermarket there. But what about us using the Chinese? What about us using the Chinese to make this approach to establish this business, and we are beneficial owners or partners? I am saying it again. The PPP and their friends, I have specific names I can call, but sometimes I rather not, are deeply involved in that kind of business with the Chinese. And so Jagdo tells us this. In fact, I'm going to share 2 articles in relation to this Chinese domination of the local business scenery. We should not become second-class citizens in our own country. Former Georgia Chamber of Commerce and Industry president says local businesses need stronger protections against foreign competition. Former president of the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Timothy Tucker, has called for stronger protections for local small businesses against foreign competition, asserting that, quote, we do not want to become second-class citizens in our own country, end quote. His comments come in the wake of recent protests by residents and vendors of Agricola against the establishment and operation of Chinese supermarkets in their community. In an exclusive interview with Kaicho News on Thursday, Tucker acknowledged the importance of foreign investment for Ghana, but stressed that it should not come at the expense of small and micro businesses. Tucker said that inadequate access to financing is a significant barrier to the growth of the small and micro business, adding that, quote, the real reason small businesses struggle to grow is their lack of proper access to financial resources. He said that foreign businesses often enter the market with substantial financial backing and competitive advantages, which jeopardizes local enterprises. Quote, when small businesses have to compete against foreign firms that benefit from better financing and support from their home countries, it can devastate indigenous and family-owned businesses, end quote, the former GCCI head said. He emphasized the vital role these small businesses play in providing additional income for single parents, retirees, and families, while warning that without protective measures, they risk being overwhelmed by foreign competition. Quote, we must safeguard them from large syndicated foreign investors that mimic local mom-and-pop stores, as this threatens the potential for middle-class entrepreneurship and community sustainability, end quote. Tucker said, adding, if we don't protect these businesses at the community, regional, and national levels, we will face serious problems in the future, end quote. Tucker urged the government to reinforce laws that protect small businesses and called for a review of zoning and anti-competitive laws to support indigenous enterprises. Quote, we should look at community frameworks similar to the small business associations in the United States that provide protections, tax exemptions, and access to financing for local businesses, end quote. Additionally, Tucker proposed that the government holds community meetings to allow small business owners to voice their challenges and needs. Quote, I envision broad consultations where each community can share its experiences, enabling us to empower local government to control the types of businesses that operate in their areas. We should have 10 foreign-most supermarkets within a quarter-mile radius. Excuse me. He expressed concern over the ease with which foreign businesses can penetrate the Guyanese market, stating, quote, these companies have the resources to analyze markets and identify opportunities which poses a threat to our local businesses. We must proactively find solutions to protect our country and its people. Tucker reiterated the importance of supporting local vendors and businesses, particularly in light of recent initiatives like the local content law in the oil and gas sector. Quote, we need to ensure that the vendors and small businesses that have been part of our communities for generations are not pushed aside. Finding ways to support them is crucial for the future of the economy. Right? That is the former president of the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Now, here is your Russian-trained economist telling us that it would be discriminatory to place restrictions on Chinese businesses. Vice President Jagdeo, according to news source. Vice President Jagdeo today declared that no restrictions can be placed on Chinese businesses opening multiple shops in villages across the country, saying that any move to restrict businesses based on nationality will not only be against international practice, but it will create a foreign policy situation for Ghana. There have been mounting complaints about a large number of Chinese stores and supermarkets opening in communities across the country, forcing other persons with small community shops to close their business due to the dominance of the Chinese businesses. The Private Sector Commission in recent weeks has been conducting research on the impact of Chinese businesses on the local private sector. At a press conference this afternoon, the Vice President said the concerns are genuine from businesses, adding that the main concern is that Chinese companies bypass regulatory approval and are given a free pass to sell a number of items in their shops, while the laws are being applied to locals and prevent them from doing same. Mr. Jagdeo admitted that a number of Chinese businesses sell a wide variety of products without having the requisite permits. He said government has taken note of the complaints and has tasked the regulatory bodies to ensure strict compliance. Quote, we have made it clear to the regulatory bodies, you have to enforce the law uniformly. And we believe that sometimes people are induced not to do that. So we are paying careful attention to this to the extent that they have these issues occurring. The people who are protesting, they are right about that. I would have done that myself if I'm next door to someone and he doesn't have to observe the law and I have to do so, particularly since I am a native of this country. Jagdeo said. The vice president said there can be no discrimination. If, quote, if the idea is to stop people because based on nationality, it would be impossible to do it because what if China says we are not going to sell Guyana any of our goods anymore, so you can't import anything from China because you don't want our people based on nationality to sell in Guyana. You can't do that and discriminate based on nationality, but you can ensure compliance based on the laws of the country, end quote, Mr. Jagdeo noted. Jagdeo agreed that there should be a leveled playing field where locals are able to sell the products without being harassed. On the other hand, he said he has received reports that Chinese businesses are a major convenience for many citizens in the communities because of their service and flexible opening hours. Let me say this. Well, you all hear it for yourself. Y'all be the judge of that. Guyanese have been socialized. Guyanese business people have been socialized over the years to believe that the businesses can only operate between 8 in the mornings and 5 in the afternoons or something to that extent. We grew up, I grew up with the understanding that businesses do not open on Sundays. Some businesses are not allowed to open on Sundays. Has there been any effort, number one, to modify, to amend the regulations surrounding the operation of businesses for locals? If those regulations have been amended, has there been adequate efforts to educate the populace about the operation of businesses? Imagine we live in a society where every business, maybe saving except for the Chinese businesses, open at 8 in the morning. And closes by 4 in the afternoon. Isn't that true? We have been socialized that businesses operate from Monday to Friday. Look at our banking system. They open when people are going to work, they close before people leave work. And they don't work on Saturdays when people are free from work in most instances and therefore can go and conduct their banking businesses. So this idiocy that we're being told about, Chinese businesses are a convenience to citizens because of the opening hours. Is it because of the regulations that Guyanese were made to follow and perhaps are still of the opinion that they have to follow? I'm not sure that the laws have been changed to allow Guyanese businesses to open at certain hours. Do we have laws permitting 24 hours opening of certain businesses? I haven't lived in the US. I haven't spent too much time in the US, but from my understanding, you could walk in a supermarket or many supermarkets or most supermarkets perhaps 24/7. Do our laws permit that? What has the government done to educate citizens who operate local businesses on the regulations by which they govern? I see Agaton David is making a very important point here. Chinese open on Good Friday. Chinese open on Good Friday. I grew up understanding that it was against the law to open a business on Good Friday before 6. Y'all share y'all experience with me. What y'all learn? The only time Chinese supermarkets close in this country is when there's a Chinese holiday. So in short, the only laws the Chinese observe in this country are the Chinese laws. So when Jack Deal comes and tell us the agencies must create a level playing field and enforce the law across the board, it's not true. It's not true. The Chinese operate here as if they have diplomatic immunity. They don't give receipts. They don't give warranties. Some argue that they don't pay taxes. The quality in many instances is substandard. Have you ever read, or in recent times have you read, of the Food and Drug Analyst Department, Food and Drugs as we call them, along with the environmental health officers, going into Chinese supermarkets and examining what they have on their shelves for expiry date and confiscating it? I can't remember hearing or seeing of any such actions against them, but I see and hear of such actions against small business operators in our communities. But I know of buying oats, for example, from Chinese supermarket, and when you open it, you got cobweb inside because it's expired. So what are we talking about? Enforcing the law across the board. Central Housing and Planning Authority is responsible for granting permits for the construction of those very supermarkets. I have spoken about infringements I recognized with the construction of the supermarket at Church of God Road. Elton McRae currently is fighting a ding-dong battle, as we say, at BV for similar infringements. You know where the permit is coming from? Central Housing and Planning Authority, because from my understanding recently, the neighborhood democratic councils, even if they object, do not have the final say. Who is the head of Central Government and Planning Authority? A member of the PPP, a minister of government. The buck stops there. Let Jagdio, I don't even know, continue to force that nonsense, jiggery pokery down the throats of the intellectually lazy. But I want them to recognize what I've been saying quite a while now. The misbehavior of the PPP is not only going to affect African Guyanese, yes, it has a debilitating effect on African Guyanese. We're affected disproportionately, I should say. But what when they don't have any other African Guyanese to beat up on and take advantage of? The impact will be felt by Indo-Guyanese too. And so a lot of our Indo-Guyanese business people are starting to feel the squeeze coming from the Chinese businesses. Ordinarily, I would have said, there's none of me business. How they make the bed, let it lie down on them. But you know what? All are involved. All are consumed. And the earlier the friends and favorites and supporters of the PPP recognize that, maybe we can confront these issues nationally and have them addressed. Jagdio and the likes will continue to make excuses for giving the Chinese and other foreign players a free rein in this country because they know they're on the table deals that they are making with them. Mr. Jordan asked some questions yesterday about the money that should come from marketing Guyana's oil. I reminded of what happened with the Petro-Caribbean funds. Time will tell. The lines are opened. 622-5933 is the number to call. 622-5933 is the number to call. I tell you like joke. I tell you seriously. If you see me going into a Chinese supermarket, no, I can't find it in any shop in Buxton, especially. Because once I find it in Buxton, even if it costs me a little more, I will buy it there. I'll tell you how serious I am about supporting my own and supporting our businesses. If I'm driving and as we say the gas light comes on in my car, so long as I'm confident I can get back to Buxton to buy gas, that is where I buy gas. I don't care who said the gas dirty. I don't care who said the gas expensive. I buy gas in Buxton. Call your life.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Amsterdam, and good morning to everyone in the Guyanese diaspora. Good morning to all Guyanese, wherever we may find ourselves. 24 hours. Business is opening for 24 hours. And on weekends, for me, I think it's a good thing. And that was the special thing about Gaisuko. Gaisuko was successful and could only be successful if you open 24 hours. Hospitals and police stations. 24 hours has been in Guyana, and the most successful to do it, to be industrial, you've got to work 24/7. Okay? And so one good example of that was Gaisuko. Gaibo and Linden, they worked 24 hours. That's the only way you could break into the industrial age. I'm not so big on Good Friday. I really don't really, because you could acknowledge Good Friday because all police officers have to go to work on Good Friday, unless they take a religious holiday. And nurses in the United States or Europe or in Guyana. They will get double time, and that's an issue for the unions to iron out. So 24 hours work programs are good for a country, particularly Guyana. We need to work 24 hours on Sunday, as Gaisuko grinding on Sunday. Guys who don't take no days off when it's time to grind cane. Neither does the hospital. And neither should we. Now, I just touched on that. Look, in St. Lucia and a lot of those islands in the Caribbean, Syrians dominate the private sector. Would you believe it? Syrians. In Haiti, Syrians dominate the private sector. Would you believe that? It's unbelievable that these guys dominate, and they dominate a lot of islands. The issue that we have with Chinese, or some of the issues that we have with East Indians in Guyana, with an ethnic hegemony, private sector hegemony, where they dominate. The Syrians are doing the same thing in St. Lucia and on these islands. We could go check it, particularly in Haiti. Unbelievable. Now, I want to talk very quickly about Dr. Heinz's discussion about oil and development. You know, there is a book called The Economic Hitman. And we have all, and the economic hitman in essence basically says this. You have people who come in from the World Bank and the IMF and tell you, well, you know, you shouldn't plant rice in Haiti anymore. You should go to bananas. And as a result of that, the Haiti rice industry, which was like bauxite to Guyana, is crippled. Haiti don't plant rice. They can't feed themselves out of rice anymore. That's gone. But they were advised by an economic hitman type of policy. It's like telling Guyana, you know, stay out of fisheries. It's not good. So people coming from these worlds, there are people that come into Guyana and advise presidential candidates and party leaders across the spectrum that they should not do certain things because it's not economic and profitable for us. And they come out from the World Bank. So now I ask myself, how is it possible that we know that we were coming into oil ever since Forbes Burnham was alive? I want you to think about something. And we never readied ourselves. When Janet Jagan made the deals, she didn't know that we had to get people sufficiently with the type of capacity to do industry, to be the educational nuts and bolts of a oil-producing economy, the people who have the know-how. Guy-Suko has them. Guy-Bo has them. Where are the people with the mental capacity for the oil industry? We haven't trained them. Who advised us to do that? There are economic hitmen that tell us, don't worry about that. We're going to take care of all of that for you. So now we have got oil arguably for the next 50 years, and we don't have an oil refinery. I wonder who are the geniuses that tell us we don't need an oil refinery. Look at Suriname. Let's look at an example of Suriname. Suriname had an oil refinery from day one. Initially, they were producing 7,000 barrels of oil per day. Recently, about 2015, they did a 10-year plan. They boosted up the oil refinery. It cost them about $991 million US. And now, at around 2015, Suriname, next door neighbor, is producing 15,000 barrels of oil a day. That's what they're refining for their own personal use. Gasoline, diesel. And they also make bitumen. And all those other spin-offs are in there. And each of those things have their own economy. Bitumen has its own economy since we built infrastructures. We are the geniuses that advise us not to get the oil refinery. So imagine, just imagine, we are pumping, we are spending almost $3 billion US now, the price has went up, to bring a pipeline down to Freetalk. What are we transporting in that pipeline? For the price of that pipeline, couldn't we build an oil refinery for about $1 billion, let's say? And with out of that $1 billion, we will be able to refine oil, crude oil, gasoline, diesel, mechanical oil, plastic, pharmaceuticals, and bitumen. Potentially $1 trillion industry, US money I'm talking about. As it is right now, we give that away. We tell Exxon, put them on a ship and you carry it somewhere else. We do what you want to do with them. We don't want a headache with that. So we don't want a headache with $1 trillion economy. We give it away to somebody. That's the advice we get in 2024. You hear me? So a lot of times when you vote, the things that got to be on the ballot are these types of things. Because we're talking about 2% and now 10%. I just explained to you, to us, how we have decided, somebody advised us, to give away crude oil. You know how much it costs for a bottle of crude oil in the store? And we could sell crude oil to the whole entire world. Crude oil, mechanical oil, for car engines. Kerosene. Bitumen. So what we're talking about, $1 billion economy. How about $1 trillion economy? Then, not to mention the stock market, which I always talk about. Commodities. Can you easily see $1 trillion economy? If an economist on this program could refute what I'm saying, please call in and refute. Because we have been misled by the same people who we are turning to for advice. People said, throw me a lifeline. And the lifeline that we're getting in political advice across the spectrum haven't yet come up to say, we need an oil refinery. Let me tell you, I'm closing this. One of the good things about Booker's and Guyana is that we didn't only make sugar, the raw product, as crude oil. We made ethanol, saved ourselves in COVID. How many spin-offs do we have coming out of Daisuke? Can you count them? The amount of spin-offs that come out from Daisuke: sugar, molasses, spirit, a variety of things. That's what the British left. We should have learned from that. We had the bauxite industry. And again, we're getting bad advice over the years. The bauxite largely was under the British. But we should have been refining bauxite. So the point I'm trying to make here, while we are talking development, and Dr. Hyde made some excellent points of how the PPP is using growth to underdevelop rather than develop. I'm saying the PPP who have been there by and large for the last 27 years, they're the ones who, it rests in their lap, have been mismanaging the system. Jack Deere knew sugar. We're talking development, we're talking industry. Sugar was losing money under Jack Deere. Most of the earliest set of sugar estates that were closed under Barrett Jack Deere. He was heading up the countries or sugar producing countries in the Caribbean. When the European Union said, hey, you know, we're not going to subsidize you, we don't need you because we have saccharin, we have sugar, brown sugar, we have corn syrup, all the sweetener. So they told Jack, you're taking the lead. The people only subsidized them. So Jack Deere complained it was costing more to make sugar than to actually make a profit off of the sugar. He said, hey, take the lead. Jack Deere began to close. Do you know on West Coast, Demerara, a state called Lenora Estate is where Irfan Ali, the squatting president, bought the entire compound, administrative compound, and is his property now. He was Minister of Housing. When he used to pass, and people from Denamso could tell you, when he used to pass in front of Lenora Estate, nothing but bush. He was like, what is estate? The estate behind the bush. The front gate just mountains of bush. I've now realized that after Sheikh Bash leave out there, Irfan Ali took over. as Minister of Housing and whatnot. And he kept the place bushy, but it's the same place. He had plans to buy that place. Who the ones benefiting from down? They blame President David Arthur Granger, but it was Jack Deere who started the prototype to close down sugar estates. He built Skeldon for $200 million. Skeldon is a hotel today. People dance and do barbecues at Skeldon Estate in the administrative grant. You want a room for rent? You could rent the entire place at Skeldon Estate. 200 million US. And every time Skeldon Estate used to break down, they got to resort back to a 100-year-old sugar estate that built from the British time. And when they built Skeldon Sugar Estate, you know what they used to say in the documents in the United States consulate they give out every month? They said that when Skeldon built, we're going to have so much electricity, we're going to sell them nearby Suriname. That's what he was telling people. We're going to have electricity like wool. We could sell it to Suriname. At the time where Suriname didn't need it. But these are the lies. $200 million gone. Do you know how much 200 million US back in 2003? Today, it's almost about 280 million US. This is just to show how the PPP's program is to swindle Guyana. So while we are dealing with political advice, we need to look at how we are being given bad advice by some of the same people who are now telling us that we are getting good advice. Not everybody that come and tell us we're getting good advice is actually giving us the soundest advice. Again, if we were getting sound advice, by now we should have been talking about the oil refinery, at least on the level of Suriname. We've got oil that far supersedes Suriname's capacity for oil. So why aren't we even discussing an oil refinery? Once again, thank you for giving me the time to explain how we've been mismanaged instead of proper management.
Thank you for calling. Voice note.
Kadaki, good morning to you and your listeners. I am so honored this morning to listen to Dr. Hines last night. Kadaki, I wake up early this morning and I listen Dr. Hines again on the starting of your show. And Kadaki, Dr. Hines has a brilliant mind. I know one day I will meet Dr. Hines in person, in life. And I hope that he will sit down and drink a beer with me. Kadaki, Guyana is in a mess, in a total mess. If I employ you to do a job for me, and within 4 years, with development, and you can't help me, doesn't make sense. It does not make any sense. What is the purpose? This installed regime, therefore, to fill their pockets. Kadaki, it's a shame. It's shameful. It's disgraceful. I cannot find words to use. But I think the Guyanese people eyes are open now after Dr. Hines demonstrate what is good and what is development. So come election day, people should not vote race. They're supposed to be voting issues. I will rest there for now, Karaki, and you have a great weekend, my brother. Stay blessed.
All right, life.
In Guyana here and around the world. My take this morning is that if Jack Dio could sit down and tell the Guyanese people that not the government or a panel of people, could give the Venezuelan government a piece out to the Atlantic, what more you won't do? What more you won't do? And Guyanese, we sit too much to encourage this violent creature to carry the country down the slope like that. Because if you're going to defend the Chinese that sell a set of crap electrical fittings for catch a fire in people's home, you ain't got no control over the goods that they sell in this country. What kind of country, what kind of leaders that we looking them to? You know? I don't know. But we have to smell the coffee and get up and get. I go to Linden and see big place putting up on these shiny buildings. What really wrong with these people? Nobody has said they can't ply the trade, but not in that way. I see at Golden Grove, when you go across the bridge in Haslington, a Chinese bill in the cemetery. That is what? That is what? Are you telling me Guyanese can't get placed a bill? And Jagyo could sit down so barefacedly and represent these Chinese? Well, we got a lot of more to learn, boss. And we got to stop this runaway trade. We have to stop it because it's not good enough at all. And like I always say, if you were not this program, I don't know what we would have been today. But anyhow, we got to try and do the best. You have a blessed day, Mr. Kadaki, and continue your show. Be safe at all times.
Thank you for your call. Let me take the time to ask y'all, when last y'all put something in the Zelle? I like to ask him a face when attacking these things, you know. When last y'all contribute something to the Zelle? Cash App has a problem. We got a problem with Cash App. It seems as though we're going to take some time resolving that issue. But you still have Zelle, 8623735187 in the name of your donor. Y'all please hop over there and put something before I leave this program. Come on. Show your support financially. Put your money where your mouth there. Call your life.
Yeah, good morning, Murray. I see you start off kind of over this morning. I say, like you have to catch a cool or something. Yeah, my contribution to the program this morning is that I want to ask Guyanese people, are you guys smart? Are we an intelligent people? I mean, how can you sit idly by and allow what is happening in Guyana today to happen? What is wrong with the people of Guyana? Guyana doesn't belong to them. It doesn't belong to him. Guyana belongs to you and your future generations. I would dare you to go if you have access to the Western trial or a destiny to mold and learn from our founding fathers. Learn from our founding fathers and take a page out of their book. Or why are we sitting and take this? Look, the brother talk about the Chinese businesses. These people are like parasites all over this country. And then again, you have the I won't call him vice president. I won't give him that title. The install regime telling you that the agency are responsible. To hell, the agencies are responsible. You are the install administration. And before they can have any business in Ghana, it is you who have to issue them licenses. Don't give them any. Don't give them their parasites. They went in Suriname, they saved about to Suriname, they're coming here. I'm asking myself, what is the benefits that Ghana have to derive from allowing the Chinese businesses in Guyana? What are the benefits? You have diplomatic relations, yes. For years, you have diplomatic relations with China. What is this substance? What really country getting from China? Well, China might give you a little military equipment and so on. What else? Huh? Or traditional Indian people, you go down Regent Street. You coming to town, go down Regent Street. Walking and checking stores. Most of these stores that have been owned by Indian national, like Guyanese, most of them they went to the places because they fed up. They were told they play to go to Canada and the place you go either pay the money to the bank or something. And when you go to shop, you see from since you're passing Chinese and Venezuelan sell it. So the country take over by China and Venezuela. And the Guyanese have no say. And you mentioned something this morning when you said sometimes you say man like you give some kind of it say that the same Indian business and them who prop up the PPP is turned on them. I gave the private sector commission, the Guyana Chambers of Commerce, and all of them. One of these days, they're going to end up and they're going to go to the store and they realize that Chinese are in the store. So that no Chinese national is reaping the benefit of Guyana today. You see what I'm saying? You understand me? And the people of Ghana sit comfortably. Are we dense? You know, some people that say, we say you don't believe in protest, but the protest is the only way effectively to deal with this government. You put 50,000 or 40,000 people on the streets of that town, and then they would know where they are. You think they're going to shoot you out and kill you? What is happening in this place? I mean, I follow the teachings and the thing of Bornum and of Javan, and nowhere have I seen these two founders allowed the kind of situation in Ghana. They both fought assiduously to keep out these foreigners out and against colonialism. But Jack Dio and the PPP wanted to get into government. They went to the colonial masters and by the way of Mercury to lobby for them to be installed in government. I'm not paying you apologies for what I'm saying this morning. And unless the people of Guyana decide to come out in their numbers, thousands in the streets of Georgetown, they will not be changed. I dare say to you, don't think about the election coming that you're going to go to the ballot and vote these people out of government. Don't think about it, because they already have a master plan to rig it. Again, you understand what I'm saying? They already has a master to rig the next election coming. Look how they were in Venezuela. Imagine Venezuelans getting say in Guyana's future, whether politically or economically. They're here, the parasites too. And these are the same people that are trying to take execrable from us. Election is a good thing, and we are law-abiding citizens, and we will go the way of election, but they're not going to move because they already have a master plan to rig it. So that I'm employing at all Guyanese. Organize yourself for marketers. Organize yourself for marketers. I'm talking 50,000 now, 100,000 people in the streets. And then Jack the over the run and go to Babajan. And you go look for the closest exit to out to Ghana. I make no apologies for that. I'm so upbeat and so frustrated because everything that I do is focused on the development of Guyana. You too, Kidaki. You wake up every morning. You have your own personal business to do. You make sure you be on this program to impart the knowledge and information to the people of Guyana. And yet still the people of Guyana sitting on their butt, their asses. Bye. Have a nice day.
Thank you for your call.
Good morning, Mr.
At least
Amsterdam.
nothing
A
there.
blessed Friday. Thanks for all the information that you give throughout the week, and may God continue to bless you. Mr. Jagdio, interest is where we can get a lot of money, and Guyanese are third class citizens. Just imagine all the Guyanese that remain in Guyana. The government don't have interest in them. Only their supporters, not even all of their supporters. And now they're defending the Chinese businessmen and all the other rest of businessmen and Guyanese business. These so-called businessmen better open their eyes. Guyana, Jagdio selling out to the country to the lowest bidder. And Guyanese will be in their country and be so indebted that they can't rise.
I see you, Luther. Thank you for coming into the Zell. Quality life.
Now, when you listen to what Dr. Hines said, I was glad he was able to educate us much more. Yesterday, however, I was not able to be on the program. Right. I have an elder cousin that lives to the north side of the village, and they are doing the street land, Divine Street. We calling on the program about it. Now they put down the blinding and they decide to lay the steel infrastructure to take on the top of the road. Well, the steel infrastructure that they put down is the weakest grade of BRC fabric. They lay all over this road. Share BRC, the cheapest grade. Now I had to do a walk in my yard and I had to buy BRC. And the BRC fabric that I buy to do something in my yard is much more sturdier than that. Cut a long story short. My cousin went out to church, and when she was coming back on Wednesday evening, how this thing is, the BRC, she ended up tangling the BRC, and she fell down. Subsequently, she had to go to the hospital and spend a set of money. So I would like to know what will happen to her. Who must reimburse her for the damages caused falling on the road? And flashlight, she is an American migrant citizen. And those people know their rights when it comes to things like that. So somebody gonna be talking to her. Lovely. Anyway, when you look at the road that is being done, that is why the roads in Guyana on completion, they don't have 2 or 3 years warranty. They've got a warranty like about 3 to 4 weeks. Because if you're going to build a road that is to take off big trucks, you got to got business in the street, businesses where the beverage factories would come into the street and supply the bakery shops. The baker shop, things come in the baker shop, vehicles, and other vehicles coming in. That means that street that they are doing and costing how much money is not going to last a proper 3 weeks. because the infrastructure is all wrong. And as many of the talk show hosts, you, Dr. Hines, and others, Mark, would rightly say, the install regime is using these road buildings as a way to extract money. What Coffee said about Lenora estate, it is the full truth because I traverse that area and I know Lenora good. I know everything that he said. That was true. Now coming to the Chinese that we're talking about, y'all forget that Sue used to pay Barack how much $100 to get deals for the Chinese. So probably all those Chinese businesses that are coming up like Wild Edo around the place, it is being paid by Sue in Jagdio's living room. So we ain't gotta go far. And the next thing, if you come to a country, Guyana business laws were, you open your business place from 8, you might go the latest to 6 o'clock. Holidays, you don't open. I think Wednesdays, they used to get a half day. I know about that. But now with the Chinese businesses in Guyana, they open from Sunday to Sunday. Some of them open the doors from 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock in the night. Them ain't shut up. So do is wrong. This install regime should try to show that they're taking the country forward. Lastly, now Glenn Ladd put up in his papers about the deal that Dr. Hines was expounding on. Now what the Guyanese got to remember, that Glenn Ladd used that same newspapers as a weapon against President Granger government after the 2nd of March 2020, on August 2020, and had Glenn Ladd along with Ramjitan been given an oil block, things would have been different. And this is pulled away, that Ramjitan has pulled away and allowed a soft-hearted person like Nigel used to become the leader of AFC. I wonder if he has signed a deal with the devil to pull away from his party in order to gain one of those oil wells. And when the election, he regroups and take it back from Nigel Youth. That's the reason why lots of people, at least I, am very fearful of this Nigel Youth leadership, because after the alleged rapists of Durham Lad openly and verbally berated Nigel Youth, calling him a dunce, said he could not have counted, and end up calling his wife, I think was an old hen. When Durham Lad was in problem, he went to the same Nigel Youth who was very soft-hearted in trying to look into his case. Well, let me tell you, Nigel, you got to be hard to buy. But I just got to church, and I still reading the Old Testament, and I only there by Moses' law, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And I don't deal with forgiveness. I don't care who is alive with me. I don't do forgiveness. Once you rise up against me, it's war until the end of time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. There's something called the Pyrrhic victory. Let me remind you of that. So you could war till the end. Is the victory worth the cost when you war to the end? Sometimes, nevertheless. Call it live.
Well, good morning, sir. I want to make a comment for the critic. Now, I'm a licensed firearm holder for 25 years now. And according to the rules, how I understand it, they said once you take your weapon out of your holster or your waist and you do not use it, it's supposed to be confiscated. If anyone doesn't listen, they can dispute what I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you for your call. Y'all expect anything to be confiscated from critics? Listen, y'all get real. It's Jack Dio and the PPP y'all dealing with. If y'all want the laws to function like the laws, y'all know what y'all gotta do. You know? Anyways, it's 3 minutes to the 9 o'clock hour. I'm about to wrap up this program. I don't want to be harping, but I'm not at 100, and so I'm not going to overextend myself. I'm honored my responsibilities. Voice to
I would just like to say, because of the advances made by the president, I would just like to say that I think that is a scheme where Chinese are coming into our country and they are doing a lot to develop themselves. I feel that if lands are given to them, instead of giving to the Chinese, give it to the Guyanese public, Indians and Africans as well. Let them establish buildings. Why are you giving lands to the Chinese? And recently I saw how many Chinese are having so much money that they're exporting. They are not interested in Guyana. They're interested in taking our money out of our country. Let our people develop. If they can't afford, give them money. We have money. Give them money to start businesses. Why are we neglecting our people and are building up another person's economy? That is not fair. Thank you.
something to note there is the Chinese got to export our money, yes. The Chinese come here to do business to build their economy. They don't come here to do business to build Guyanese economy. If your leaders can't recognize that, too bad for them. Do you know the Chinese? Well, I don't know for a fact, but I rather suspect the Chinese triad. How many of you know about the Chinese triad? I think the triad is operating in this country. The triad is operating in this country. I'm currently, what should I say, gathering information about what is taking place on Mandela Avenue there, at what we commonly refer to as the Chinese embassy. You see that entire stretch of land that was apparently gifted to the Chinese for the construction of the embassy. You recognize it's a big, bright economic zone now? I want some of y'all turn a fly on the wall and go in those buildings and see what is happening. You read about the Chinese triad, you heard about the Chinese triad in the US and so on. You see movies about the Chinese triad. I'll check and see for me. If any of you can, those who have sources, let your sources tell you what is happening in Guyana. Find out why a lot of your big shots with their big vehicles are parked there on a daily, nightly basis. Somebody mentioned duffel bags of money. Find out about the gambling that takes place there on a daily. Find out about everything, as a matter of fact, that happens there on a daily. Thank you, Rosamond, Luther, and Brentnell for visiting the Zell. I look forward to more of you visiting the Zell in the course of today and over the weekend. I'll contribute financially to the upkeep of this program. I gotta go. I just have to go. It's Friday. I have to do the meals for the children at school, and yeah, I have to do that. And then I hopefully will have to catch me some rest because I have to rest and recuperate. I'm not fortunate. I don't have a big squad, and so the things that I have to do, I just have to do them when I have to do them, and then I can see how I can squeeze out a little rest here and a little rest here. So usually if I am under the weather, it takes me longer to recuperate because I have to be burning the candles at both ends. Good. But in the meantime, between time, you all have a good one. Much love. Like I say, come down to Club Twilight tonight to Friday night. Hang. And on Saturday, it's Oldies night. Love y'all. Stay put. Stay vigilant. Keep the fight. Goodbye.